They thought she'd never speak again, not after what she saw, not after the man in the park. But when a therapy dog named Sunny stepped between her and the man who stole her voice, something ancient awakened. In that courtroom, the girl said nothing, but the dog growled and the world finally heard her. Charleston, South Carolina, was a city draped in the scent of magnolias and history. Cobblestone streets wove between pastel-colored buildings, their shutters faded by sun and salt air, and horse-drawn carriages still creaked past iron gates and jasmine-draped porches. The afternoon air was thick with humidity, as the summer light dipped low, turning the marshes golden. In a quiet suburb nestled just beyond the historic district, 6-year-old Lily Thompson stared out of a rain-speckled window, her breath leaving foggy ghosts on the glass. Lily had once been a radiant child, with strawberry blonde curls that bounced like springs and eyes the color of new leaves. She was small for her age, dainty and feather-light, but her presence had always filled rooms with giggles and endless stories. That was before the incident, before the man in the park. Now she hadn't spoken a word in 3 weeks. Her laughter had disappeared into the shadows of a silent world. She barely ate, didn't draw anymore, and only reacted with a quiet flinch when someone spoke too loudly. Her mother, Amanda Thompson, stood a few feet away, watching her daughter with a hollow expression. Amanda was in her early 30s, tall and willowy, with sun-freckled skin and ash-brown hair she often pulled into a rushed bun. The creases under her eyes betrayed too many sleepless nights. Once a middle school history teacher, known for her warm presence and passion for storytelling, Amanda now spoke in whispers and moved like a ghost around their home. She had been in the kitchen only a few steps away when Lily was nearly taken. That moment carved something sharp and unrelenting inside her, a mother's guilt she couldn't wash away. The man responsible, or so Amanda believed, was still free. Ethan Cole, 42. Neat dark hair, a pressed button down, and the kind of ordinary handsomeness that didn't alarm anyone. He worked as a real estate appraiser, lived alone, and had no criminal record. But that day in the park, Amanda had seen him kneel beside Lily near the swings offering her something. By the time Amanda had sprinted across the grass, he had already backed away, waving it off as a misunderstanding. The police couldn't arrest him on suspicion alone. There were no witnesses close enough, no cameras, no physical contact, just a scared girl who wouldn't speak, and a man who smiled too much. Amanda refused to give up. She'd reported him, she'd called, she'd cried. And when no answers came, she turned to the only place left, Charleston's Child Trauma Therapy Center. The center sat at the edge of a small lake surrounded by weeping willows. It looked more like a cottage than a clinic, with lavender growing wild beneath the porch rails and wind chimes singing from the eaves. Inside, warm wooden floors stretched beneath sunlight that filtered through sheer curtains, and the smell of chamomile tea lingered in the air. Amanda had been skeptical at first until she met Dr. Evelyn Rhodes. Dr. Rhodes was in her 50s, a small woman with silver curls that framed a face shaped by decades of quiet patience. Her voice was like warm cloth, always soft, never rushed. She wore loose linen pants, canvas sneakers, and a lanyard of wooden beads she fiddled with when she listened. Evelyn specialized in selective mutism and trauma bonding, and today she had arranged a special session for Lily. Waiting in the therapy room was Sunny. Sunny was a 6-year-old golden retriever with a coat the color of pale honey and eyes that looked like they'd seen too much. He had a faint limp in his left hind leg and a thin silvery scar running diagonally from his rib cage to just above the knee. Once he had worked with veterans at the VA hospital across town, trained to sense panic and ground flashbacks with gentle nudges and warm weight. A fire in the facility 2 years ago had injured Sunny badly, and he was retired shortly after. Dr. Rhodes had adopted him, believing he still had more to give. Today, Sunny sat quietly on a cushioned mat near the bookshelf. His ears perked, his body still. When Lily entered the room, clinging to Amanda's hand, his eyes lifted, not curious, not insistent, just aware. Lily didn't look at him. Her gaze dropped to the floor, then to her shoes, then nowhere. Amanda crouched beside her, brushing a lock of hair behind her daughter's ear. "He's very gentle," she whispered. "You don't have to talk to him. You don't even have to touch him." Dr. Rhodes stood nearby, offering no pressure, only presence. "Sunny will just be here," she said softly. "He's not here to ask questions, just to sit with you." Minutes passed. Then Lily did something unexpected. She walked 3 quiet steps toward the dog. Sonny didn't move. He didn't wag his tail. He didn't even blink. He simply breathed steady and slow. Lily sat down beside him, close enough to feel his warmth. Her small fingers hovered in the air, uncertain. Then, with infinite slowness, they reached forward and rested against his fur. Amanda gasped. It was the first time Lily had reached out to anything since that day in the park. Dr. Rhodes exchanged a glance with her, then looked away, giving them space. Lily didn't speak, but her body relaxed. She leaned into Sonny, slightly her head tilting toward his side. And Sonny, wise, battered, golden-hearted Sonny, let her. Outside, the skies of Charleston remained heavy with summer clouds. Spanish moss danced in the breeze, and boats bobbed along the marina. But inside that small therapy room, something unspoken had begun to bloom. That evening back home, Amanda watched as Lily sat on the carpet drawing. It was simple, just 2 stick figures, one small one with 4 legs. And beside them, a dark shape that loomed large in the background. Amanda didn't ask questions. She only sat beside her daughter and watched the crayons move. The days in Charleston rolled by in a haze of jasmine-scented breezes and late summer warmth. The humidity clung gently to everything it touched, and the city's pastel houses seemed to glow a little softer beneath the sun. At the edge of Colonial Lake, children laughed as ducks waddled past the benches and joggers moved along the shady trails, their steps rhythmically tapping against cobblestones. Yet amid the cheerful routine of the city, Lily Thompson was still silent. It had been 1 week since Lily first met Sonny at the therapy center. Since then, something small but profound had begun to shift. Each morning, Amanda would gently guide her daughter out of bed and into a world that still frightened her. But now, there was always a golden figure walking beside them, his tail swaying like a metronome of calm reassurance. Sonny had quickly become a constant presence in Lily's life. Wherever she went, he went. When she sat curled on the couch, he lay at her feet. When she ventured outside, he was her quiet sentinel, never more than a few inches away. Amanda noticed that Lily no longer flinched when cars passed by the window, or froze when footsteps echoed in the hallway. Something about the dog's presence was anchoring her. Sonny was more than just a therapy animal. At 6 years old, his golden fur had lost a bit of its youthful shine, especially around the muzzle where streaks of silver had begun to appear. His eyes were large and warm, set deep into a broad, gentle face. There was intelligence behind those eyes, something reflective, almost human in its understanding. He didn't bark unnecessarily. He didn't seek attention. He simply watched, waited, and moved only when Lily did. On his back right leg, the scar from the fire still showed through the fur, a pale, jagged line that reminded everyone he had survived something terrible too. One morning, Amanda decided to try something new. "Let's go to the park, sweetheart," she said softly as she knelt beside Lily. The little girl didn't respond, but her hand instinctively found the soft leash attached to Sonny's collar. Amanda took that as a yes. They walked slowly through the streets of Charleston, where the buildings whispered stories of centuries past, and Spanish moss draped over every tree like curtains from an old play. When they reached the entrance to the park, Amanda could feel her own heart beating faster. This was the place. The memory returned in flashes. Lily, on the swing, the man kneeling, Amanda's voice rising in panic. She shook her head and exhaled. That day would not define them. They walked beneath the oaks, past the shaded benches and the small playground, where other children squealed with joy. Lily held Sonny's leash tightly, her fingers white-knuckled. Sonny's steps were steady, his ears twitching at every sound, but his body remained calm. He glanced up at Lily once, and Amanda noticed the girl's shoulders relax just a little. After a while, Lily sat down on a bench beneath a crepe myrtle. Sonny curled at her feet like a living pillow, his breathing slow and even. Amanda stood nearby, her eyes watching every passerby like a hawk. Then a voice broke the quiet. "Ma'am, excuse me." Amanda turned sharply. A man stood a few feet away. He looked to be in his late 60s, with a gray beard that trailed down to his chest and sun-worn skin that spoke of years outdoors. He wore a tattered green jacket and pushed a squeaky shopping cart filled with blankets and crushed cans. His eyes, however, were alert and surprisingly kind. "My name's Caleb," he said, his voice rasped by time and cigarettes. I think I saw your daughter here a while back. The day, when that guy tried to take her." Amanda stepped forward cautiously. "You were here?" Caleb nodded slowly. I sleep near the boat dock sometimes. Safer than downtown. I saw him, dark hair, button shirt, fancy shoes. He looked like he belonged, but something was off. He was talking real low to her, real smooth-like. Gave me the creeps. Amanda's pulse quickened. Could you describe him more? Anything specific had a leather strap watch, Caleb said. Left wrist, and he smelled like cologne, strong like pepper and wood. Amanda fished out her phone. Would you be willing to talk to the police, to the therapist working on her case? Caleb hesitated, eyes darting toward the police cruiser parked across the street. I don't like cops much. Got no home, no ID. But... He looked down at Lily, who was now softly petting Sonny's back. I don't like men who hurt little girls more. You tell your people to meet me here tomorrow, same time. Amanda's throat tightened. Thank you, she whispered. Caleb gave a crooked smile and wheeled his cart away, humming something that sounded like an old hymn. That evening, Amanda called Dr. Rhodes and told her everything. She also reported the encounter to the local detective who promised to follow up. It wasn't much, but it was more than they had before. The next day, under the soft glow of morning sun, Lily and Sonny returned to the park. Amanda walked behind them, letting Lily lead. They reached the bench beneath the crepe myrtle again, and Lily sat without prompting. Sonny rested his chin on her shoe. Amanda's phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Rhodes confirming Caleb had shown up for the meeting. Suddenly, Amanda heard a whisper. It was barely audible, just 2 words, but it cracked the air like thunder. Good boy, Sonny. Amanda turned, eyes wide. Lily was looking down at her dog, her small hand resting on his scarred leg, her lips still parted in awe. It was the first thing she had said since the incident. Amanda dropped to her knees beside her daughter and pulled her into a trembling hug. Tears streamed down her face, falling into Lily's hair. Sonny ever still looked up at them both and gave a soft wag of his tail. It wasn't a floodgate, it wasn't a miracle, but it was a beginning. Rain fell steadily over Charleston, draping the city in a curtain of silver mist. The skies were heavy with dark clouds, and the streets shone like polished stone, reflecting the blur of headlights and wrought iron balconies. In the quiet corner of Colonial Park, Lily Thompson held tightly to the leash of her golden companion Sonny. Her raincoat, lemon yellow, and 2 sizes too big, fluttered with each breeze, but her grip never loosened. Beside her, Amanda walked in silence, her umbrella tilted just enough to shield both herself and her daughter from the drizzle. It was Lily who had asked to walk that morning, a whisper barely audible park, but it had been enough to stir Amanda into hopeful action. Something in her daughter had begun to stir awake, one hesitant step at a time, and she would follow that spark wherever it led. Sonny trotted ahead, his golden coat darkened by the rain, but his posture alert, his ears constantly twitching at passing sounds. His scar, a pale line along his back leg, stood out more in the wet, but he moved without limp today, as if driven by something internal. The rain didn't bother him. He was watching the world through a lens only he seemed to understand. As they turned down East Bay Street, lined with antebellum mansions and wrought iron fences, something changed. Sonny stopped dead in his tracks, his body going rigid. A low rumble emerged from his throat. Lily paused too, eyes wide as she followed Sonny's gaze. Parked half on the curb not far ahead was a matte black utility van. It looked ordinary, too ordinary. Its back doors were closed, its windows tinted. Amanda noticed the hesitation in Sonny, then the shift in Lily's expression. Her small fingers curled tightly around the leash. Sonny's tail had gone stiff. He took 1 step forward, then another, growling low. Amanda stepped protectively in front of Lily, placing her hand on the dog's harness. Sonny, she said gently. What is it? Just then an older woman emerged from the bakery next door. She was petite and hunched with snowy white hair pinned into a tight bun. Her name was Edith Greaves, the owner of Greaves Breads and Tea, a Charleston institution. She noticed the dog's stance and frowned. Is everything all right? She asked, her voice raspy but firm. Amanda glanced at her. He's usually calm. He's never growled like this before. Edith peered toward the van. That thing's been parked there since last night. No one's claimed it. Made me nervous, truth be told. Amanda's mind raced. She knelt beside Sonny, who was now sniffing the air, his body tense as a bowstring. Could he be remembering something? She whispered aloud. Lily reached out and gently pressed her hand to Sonny's back. She didn't say a word, but the dog relaxed slightly under her touch, his growling subsiding into quiet watchfulness. Amanda looked up at Edith again. "Thank you. I think we need to make a call." Back home, Amanda contacted Detective Joseph Briggs, the officer assigned to Lily's case. Briggs was in his mid-40s, tall and broad-shouldered, with the weary eyes of someone who had seen too much. He wore simple gray suits and spoke in calm, clipped tones. He had interviewed Amanda weeks earlier politely but skeptically, when the evidence against Ethan Cole had been deemed too circumstantial. Amanda wasn't sure he remembered her, but when she mentioned Sonny's reaction and the van's location, he told her to stay put. Detective Briggs arrived within 20 minutes. He parked his unmarked sedan a few houses down and approached on foot, his overcoat damp and his notepad already in hand. "Show me," he said. Amanda led him to the corner where the van remained parked in the rain. Sonny stood beside her, silent now, but focused his gaze fixed on the vehicle. Briggs circled the van, slowly scribbling in his pad. Then he crouched beside the license plate. "Interesting," he murmured. "Partial plate matches the digits reported by that homeless witness you mentioned. YKZ, last 3 digits are faded, but the start matches." Amanda's pulse jumped. That was Caleb. Briggs stood. "I remember." Honestly, his statement was shaky. No ID, no address, lots of missing details. But this changes things. If this dog recognized something and it lines up with Caleb's story, it's worth reopening the file. That afternoon, Amanda found Caleb sitting beneath the awning of a shuttered storefront, wrapped in a plastic poncho and sipping from a thermos. "You were right," she said simply. Caleb looked up with eyes that had stopped expecting hope. "About what? The van, the dog, the plate," she explained. "The detective is reopening the case, but he needs your help, officially." Caleb hesitated. "If I go in, they'll run me. I've got priors, vagrancy, nothing violent, but enough to make them shrug me off." Amanda knelt beside him, her voice steady. "They won't. I'll be there. You don't have to do this alone." Caleb studied her, then gave a slow nod. "All right then. Let's rattle some cages." The next morning, Caleb walked into the downtown precinct, beside Amanda, shoulders squared like a soldier marching into battle. Detective Briggs met them personally and ushered Caleb into an interview room. Amanda waited outside with Lily and Sonny, her hand trembling slightly as she watched the door close behind them. Inside, Caleb gave a full statement, this time under oath. He described Ethan Cole, his voice, his mannerisms, his cologne, and the van. He even sketched a rough image of Cole's face. Briggs recorded everything. When Caleb emerged an hour later, he looked exhausted, but lighter. Amanda hugged him without hesitation. "You did something brave," she said. Caleb chuckled. First time in a long time. Later that evening, as the rain cleared and the golden light returned to the Charleston skyline, Amanda stood at the porch watching Lily and Sonny nap together in the living room. The dog's breathing was slow and rhythmic, and Lily's head rested against his side. Caleb's bravery had reopened the case, and Sonny's instincts had turned the tide. The past was still close, but for the first time, Amanda felt the future coming into view. The courtroom was steeped in a quiet tension that clung to the walls like fog. Charleston's early morning light filtered through tall windows, casting long bars of pale gold across the polished wooden floor. Though the room was not full, every person inside sat with the rigid posture of anticipation. At the center of it all, seated beside her mother at the witness bench, was Lily Thompson, 6 years old, delicate as a whisper, her small fingers curled around the leash of the dog who never left her side. Sonny sat tall beside her, his golden fur immaculately brushed, though his ears were slightly flattened in alertness. His posture was protective, his large brown eyes sweeping the room like a silent guard. He had been allowed into the proceedings by special court order, a decision made reluctantly by Judge Matthew Corwin, a man in his early 60s with thinning silver hair, square jaw, and a reputation for strict formality. Today, however, there was something different in his gaze, softness beneath the authority. Amanda Thompson, seated just behind her daughter, watched closely. She wore a tailored gray blouse and black slacks, her dark blonde hair pulled into a clean twist, but the faint tremor in her hands betrayed the anxiety she hid. She hadn't slept well the night before, too many questions, too many what-ifs. But now, watching Lily reach out to touch Sonny's back for comfort, she reminded herself to breathe. At the defense table sat Ethan Cole. He wore a navy blazer and slate gray tie, his short brown hair combed to precision, his expression unreadable. His hands were neatly folded, the cuff of his watch just visible under his sleeve. From the outside, he looked like any well-groomed professional, but Amanda could feel something cold radiating from him, calculated stillness too perfect. Standing beside him was Michael Landry, his attorney. Landry was in his 40s, a tall man with angular features and a tendency to pace. He had objected to the presence of Sonny, arguing the animal could sway the jury emotionally, but Judge Corwin had reviewed the documentation provided by Dr. Evelyn Rhodes, the child therapist whose quiet work with Lily had transformed silence into healing. Sonny was more than emotional support. He was her voice. A bailiff called the room to order. The gavel struck once, and Judge Corwin nodded. "We will now proceed with testimony. Ms. Collins, please begin." Jenna Collins, the lead prosecutor, stood from her seat. She was in her early 30s with sharp cheekbones and a calm, steady tone that commanded attention without shouting. Her dark brown hair was pinned up neatly, and her navy dress suit bore no wrinkles. She approached slowly, offering Lily a warm smile. "Hi, Lily," she began gently. "I know this room is a little scary, but you're very brave. And remember, you don't have to speak. If you'd like to answer by pointing or nodding, that's okay." Lily didn't move at first. Her gaze stayed on the polished wood grain of the bench, her shoulders rising and falling in shallow breaths. Then slowly her hand found Sonny's fur, grounding her. Jenna crouched slightly to be closer to eye level. "Lily, can you tell us, do you see the man who was at the park that day?" Lily's breath hitched. She didn't look up, but after a long pause, her hand rose, small, pale, deliberate, and pointed across the room, toward Ethan Cole. The silence was immediate. All eyes turned to the man in the blazer, whose posture remained unchanged, though his jaw tensed ever so slightly. Landry was on his feet. "Objection. The child has been exposed to pre-trial materials, including images of my client. This is not a valid identification." Judge Corwin held up a hand. "Objection noted. The court will consider the totality of circumstances." Jenna nodded, then gently asked Lily, "Can you tell us what he said to you at the park?" Lily didn't answer. Instead, her fingers began to move. It was subtle, barely noticeable to anyone unfamiliar, but Amanda recognized it immediately. It was a signal, a hand cue she had learned during trauma therapy sessions with Dr. Rhodes, a silent code to indicate distress, a call for help. Sonny saw it too. In an instant, the golden retriever stiffened. He rose to all fours, stepping forward in front of Lily. His ears pointed back, his body lowered slightly in a protective stance. Then he growled a low guttural sound that rumbled deep from within his chest. Not loud, not savage, but firm. A warning. The room froze. Ethan Cole shifted in his seat, blinking rapidly. For the first time, his expression cracked. He glanced at Sonny with a flicker of something, recognition, fear. Judge Corwin straightened in his chair, his brows furrowed. "Is the animal reacting to a pre-trained signal?" Jenna turned slightly. "Yes, Your Honor. That was a therapeutic signal developed between the child and the animal during supervised sessions." Landry scoffed. "Your Honor, this is theatrics." Judge Corwin didn't answer immediately. His gaze remained on Sonny, then on Lily, who despite the noise was calm, still, safe. "I've read the case file," he said. "This dog has been nothing but composed." The reaction was prompted. "We proceed." Amanda exhaled shakily. Lily, with her small hands still tangled in Sonny's collar, leaned her head against his shoulder. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. But, in that moment, she said more than any words could carry. Later, after court recessed for the morning, Amanda stepped into the hallway with Lily and Sonny in tow. The marble floors echoed under her steps as they made their way to the small waiting lounge near the elevators. Seated there already was Dr. Evelyn Rhodes. The therapist rose as they approached. She wore her usual cotton cardigan and olive green slacks, her hair gathered in a loose braid over one shoulder. Her presence exuded calm. "I saw it," Evelyn said softly, kneeling to look at Lily. "You were so brave," and Sonny knew. He always knows. Amanda crouched next to them. "You did that, Lily. You remembered the signal." For the first time that day, Lily looked up. Just a glance. But her lips moved slightly. Not sound, not quite speech, yet something deliberate. Evelyn's hand found Amanda's shoulder. "She's coming back." The sun had not yet risen when the unmarked police convoy turned off the main road, the tires crunching over gravel and pine needles. The forest surrounding the Charleston wetlands was heavy with moisture, its tall cypress trees veiled in moss and silence. A layer of mist drifted just above the ground, blurring the outlines of shrubs and fallen branches. At the front of the convoy, Detective Joseph Briggs sat behind the wheel of a dark SUV, his jaw tight, his eyes scanning the dirt path ahead with grim focus. Next to him sat Officer Dana Ruiz, a woman in her early 30s with short auburn hair and deep-set brown eyes. Ruiz had a reputation in the department as one of the most meticulous crime scene technicians in the state, methodical, even-tempered, and unshakably thorough. She wore a charcoal gray tactical vest over a long-sleeved shirt and kept her radio clipped close to her shoulder. In the rear compartment, Sonny lay quietly, his leash held by Amanda Thompson, who sat with Lily curled up beside her. The girl's head rested on her mother's shoulder, and her arms were wrapped around the dog's golden neck. Amanda had hesitated when Briggs asked her and Sonny to come along. It wasn't standard procedure to bring civilians into an active investigation, but given the way Sonny had reacted to the scent from Ethan Cole's clothing during evidence processing, Briggs had made the call. "We need the dog," he had said. "There's something he knows, something we missed." The vehicle slowed. "There," Ruiz said, pointing ahead. Beyond a wall of tangled brush, a small weather-worn cabin emerged. Its wooden walls were blackened with time and rot, the tin roof slightly caved on one side. No signs of life, no cars. Just the quiet murmur of frogs and the occasional flap of a heron lifting from the water. Briggs stepped out first, followed by Ruiz and two other officers, one of whom was Officer Nolan Hayes, a younger patrolman with sandy hair and a nervous energy. Hayes adjusted the strap on his rifle and kept his gaze sharp. Amanda exited carefully, helping Lily down. Sonny leapt out beside them, his nose twitching as he immediately lowered his head and began sniffing the air. Briggs turned. "Keep Lily near the car," he told Amanda. "But let the dog lead if he signals again." Sonny's body stiffened as he approached the front porch. A low, nearly inaudible whine escaped his throat. His tail lowered, and his ears flattened slightly, not in fear, but in alertness. He paused near the steps, then moved to the left side of the cabin, nose to the ground. "Follow him," Briggs said, motioning the team forward. They circled around to the rear, where thick vines clung to the outer wall. Sonny stopped before a patch of disturbed earth near the foundation. It looked like nothing at first glance, just wet ground leaves, mud. But then Ruiz spotted it. Footprints, she murmured, crouching. Small. Could be a child's. And recent. Briggs turned to Hayes. "Clear the perimeter. See if there's another entrance." The team split. Ruiz continued documenting prints while Briggs tried the rusted back door. It gave way with a creak, opening into a kitchen choked with dust and mildew. Empty soup cans were stacked in a corner. A broken cot rested beneath a shattered window. Sonny didn't move from the threshold until Amanda gently touched his collar. He stepped inside slowly, his nails clicking against the floor. Then he stopped, ears straight, head turned toward a wooden cabinet against the far wall. Ruiz moved ahead and opened it. Inside, tucked behind a cracked panel, was a bundle wrapped in a child's blanket. Toys, dirty, faded plastic animals, and a pink backpack smeared with dirt. Ruiz's face paled. "Briggs, you need to see this." Moments later, Officer Hayes called out from the other side of the house. "Sir, there's a cellar hatch, hidden beneath the porch boards." Briggs joined him, and together they pried it open. A steep set of stairs led into darkness. Sonny growled again, low and deep, before bounding forward, pulling Amanda with him. Briggs went first, flashlight sweeping the narrow hallway until it illuminated a metal door at the end. A faint sound could be heard, something between a rustle and a gasp. When they opened the door, the light landed on a young girl no older than 8, huddled in the corner. She was pale with tangled blonde hair and eyes that flinched from the light. Her clothes were dirty, torn, and her voice barely a whisper. "Help," she croaked. Briggs knelt immediately. "It's okay. We're here now. You're safe." Ruiz moved fast, checking for injuries, while Amanda hung back, shielding Lily. But Sonny moved forward slowly, his tail wagging gently now, his body low and calm. The girl reached out a trembling hand, and when her fingers brushed his fur, she began to sob. Her name was Emma Wakefield. She had been missing for nearly 5 months. Her disappearance had been linked to 3 other cold cases across the region, all involving young girls, all unsolved until now. DNA from the blanket and backpack would later tie the location to Ethan Cole definitively. In the days that followed, media coverage exploded. Missing girl found in swamp cabin headlines declared. Emma's parents wept openly on national television. Caleb, the homeless man, whose tip had reignited the investigation, was quietly moved into a transitional housing program through a city outreach initiative. He received a warm jacket, medical care, and a voucher for job placement, his first steps back towards stability. Lily didn't speak of the seller, but she held Emma's hand when they visited her at the hospital. The 2 girls sat side by side in silence, their expressions understanding in a way only survivors could comprehend. Sunny lay at their feet watching over them both. Amanda stood nearby, arms crossed lightly over her chest. Detective Briggs approached her, his coat slung over his arm. "Your daughter and that dog? They gave us more than we ever expected." Amanda nodded, her eyes never leaving Lily. "He's more than a dog," she said softly. "He's a bridge." Briggs smiled faintly. "Well, that bridge just solved a case we couldn't crack for months." Sonny looked up at that moment, ears perked, tail thumping once against the floor, as if he understood. The Charleston County Courthouse stood solemn beneath a brightening sky, its columns bathed in the honeyed gold of a rising sun. After days of rain and gray clouds, the clarity of the morning felt symbolic, like the city itself had been holding its breath, and now, at last, exhaled. Amanda Thompson stood just outside the courtroom's east wing, Lily at her side, Sunny resting at their feet. The little girl wore a pale green cardigan over a cotton dress, her red curls pinned back neatly with a barrette shaped like a butterfly. Her face was unreadable, serene, but watchful. Amanda glanced down as Lily's small hand brushed against Sunny's neck, seeking reassurance in the dog's calm presence. Sunny, always attuned, wagged his tail once in silent reply. Inside preparations were underway for the next phase of the trial. The rescue of Emma Grace had changed everything. For the first time, they had a living, speaking witness beyond Lily, a child who could place Ethan Cole at the scene of his crimes. Emma sat inside a quiet conference room on the courthouse's 3rd floor. At 7, she was thin and small for her age, with pale skin and dark blonde hair that hung in soft, uneven strands around her face. Her eyes, though, were startling, a shade of blue, so light it seemed to reflect everything around her. She clutched a plush gray bunny as she waited beside her mother, Teresa Grace. Teresa, a woman in her late 30s, carried the weary grace of someone who had been forced to grow stronger than she ever wanted to be. Her chestnut hair was pulled into a low bun, and the corners of her eyes showed the exhaustion of months without sleep. She had nearly given up hope. When the call came from the Charleston PD, she had fallen to her knees in the middle of her kitchen, the phone still clutched in her shaking hand. Now she sat beside her daughter, their chairs pulled close together. "You only have to tell the truth, baby," she whispered. "That's all." In the hallway, Detective Joseph Briggs reviewed his notes one last time. His face was more lined than it had been a week ago, the weight of this case having carved its place beneath his eyes. Still he stood with a quiet confidence, his presence solid. When Jenna Collins arrived, he gave her a short nod. "She's ready," he said. Jenna adjusted her blazer. "Let's bring the truth into the light." When Emma took the stand, the entire courtroom fell into breathless stillness. She looked smaller than anyone expected, her tiny frame nearly lost behind the wooden rail. But her voice, when it came, was clear. "Yes," she said. "That's him." She pointed directly at Ethan Cole. Gasps stirred through the gallery. Amanda squeezed Lily's hand gently. Sonny raised his head. Emma continued. "He told me his name was Mr. Eric. He said he had a dog in his car. I wanted to see it." She paused, her voice trembling. Then he locked the doors. Landry Cole's attorney stood with forced composure. "Your Honor, the witness is a child. She has been through trauma, her memory may be distorted." Jenna stepped forward before the judge could speak. "We have more than memory now. DNA from the cabin matched to Cole, soil samples from his vehicle, and now a positive visual ID." Judge Corwin, seated with his usual gravity, looked over the courtroom. "The objection is overruled. The witness is credible." As Emma returned to her mother, Amanda felt her throat tighten. She looked to Lily, whose eyes remained fixed on Emma with quiet understanding. Two girls broken by the same monster, and now putting him back in his cage. The press swarmed as the court recessed. News vans lined the square, cameras flashed, and reporters shouted questions over each other's voices. But none of them got too close, not with Sonny nearby. The media had already begun dubbing him a hero. Golden Guardian read the headlines, "Charleston's Angel with Fur." In one widely shared photo, Sonny stood tall beside Lily during a press walk, his eyes forward, his expression noble. Someone had captioned it, "Sometimes the bravest hearts walk on four legs." Later that afternoon, Amanda sat with Lily and Sonny in the small green garden behind the courthouse. It was quiet there, just a few benches, some trimmed hedges, and a statue of a woman reading to a child. Amanda ran a hand down Sonny's back. "You're going to be in the papers again," she said softly. "You never asked for any of this, did you?" Sonny pressed his head against her thigh. His eyes closed in gentle contentment. Detective Briggs found them there a few minutes later. "Judge Corwin's moving the timeline up," he said. "They're pushing for closing statements tomorrow. The evidence is airtight now." Amanda nodded. "Good. He doesn't deserve another minute of freedom." Briggs paused. "You did a lot more than most people would have. You never gave up." "I couldn't," she replied. "Not with Lily watching me." As he turned to leave, he added, "You know this case changed more than one life. Caleb's off the street now. City got him into a veterans program. Said it's the first time he slept indoors in 2 years." Amanda smiled faintly. "That man saved us all." Back at home that night, Lily sat beside Sonny, tracing his scar with her fingers. Her voice, still soft, came again. "Hero," she said, and Sonny, as if understanding, leaned his head against her shoulder. The courtroom was full. Not just full, but brimming. Every wooden bench occupied every back wall lined with silent observers. The tension in the air was thick, electric. The city of Charleston had followed every twist of the case with breath held tight, but now the end was near. The final day of testimony. The final moment of truth. Lily Thompson sat quietly at the front, dressed in a pale lilac dress with a scalloped hem, her red curls tied back with a ribbon that matched the softness of her expression. At her side, Sonny lay still as stone, his golden body curled close, one paw draped gently over her foot, as if he knew today more than any other day she would need him. Amanda sat directly behind them, spine-straight, hands clasped tightly in her lap. She wore a navy blazer over a white blouse, her hair in a simple braid. Though composed on the outside, her heart beat like a snare drum. This was the moment they had built toward, and it would be Lily's. Judge Matthew Corwin entered the chamber with his usual gravity. The murmurs died instantly as he took his seat, gavel in hand. "This court will now hear final statements in the matter of the state of South Carolina versus Ethan Cole," he announced. His voice carried not only authority, but the exhaustion of a man who had seen justice too often delayed. Ethan Cole sat at the defense table, a faint sheen of sweat on his brow, despite the air conditioning. His eyes, once calculating and unreadable, now held something else: tightness. The sheen of control had worn thin. His attorney, Michael Landry, whispered something in his ear. Ethan didn't respond. Jenna Collins rose first. The prosecutor's navy dress suit was crisp, her posture composed. She didn't pace, didn't raise her voice. She simply let the truth speak. "This trial has not been about speculation. It has been about children," she said. "One who found her voice through the loyalty of a dog. One who survived unimaginable darkness and chose to speak. And 4 others who never had the chance to speak at all." She let the silence settle. Evidence ties Ethan Cole to the scene. Witnesses place him with the victims. And both children, Lily Thompson and Emma Grace, identified him independently. You've heard their stories. Now the law must speak for them. Then came Landry. He tried to pivot to suggest trauma could alter perception. But no one in the room was listening anymore. Not really, not even the jury. The truth had settled into every corner, and no amount of legal maneuvering could smoke it out now. Judge Corwin cleared his throat. "Miss Thompson?" he said, his eyes falling to Lily. "Do you feel strong enough to speak?" Today Lily looked up at her mother. Amanda nodded once but didn't move. Sonny stood slowly, then sat back down with his flank pressed against Lily's chair. The child stood. The courtroom seemed to lean forward. Even the creak of benches stopped. Lily walked the few steps to the witness stand, and took her seat. Her small hands rested on the wooden edge. She didn't need to be sworn in. Everyone knew she spoke only truth. Lily, the judge, said, voice softened, "Can you tell us one more time? Is the man who frightened you in this room?" She didn't blink. She didn't waver. She raised her hand and pointed directly at Ethan Cole. "That's him," she whispered. The two words echoed louder than any gavel strike. Ethan's expression broke for the first time, a tick of the jaw, a slight lean back in his chair. Amanda pressed her hand to her mouth. Jenna nodded to the judge. The prosecution rests. And then it was done. Later that afternoon, Judge Corwin read the verdict. "Ethan Cole is hereby sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole," he said. "Let this serve as final judgment." The court erupted not in cheers, but in relief. Tears ran freely, hands clasped tightly. Outside, under the warm light of Charleston's late afternoon sun, Amanda and Lily stood near the courthouse steps. Caleb was already there, leaning against the iron railing. He was newly shaven, wearing a button-down shirt someone from the shelter had pressed for him. He looked clean and calm, his old shopping cart gone, replaced by a battered leather messenger bag. "You came," Amanda said. "I told you I'd see this through," Caleb replied. "They offered me a job, groundskeeper at Colonial Park." He chuckled. "Seems the place could use someone who's seen it from all sides." Amanda smiled. "That park saved us. You and the girl saved me," he said, tipping an imaginary hat. Across the green, reporters tried to catch glimpses of Sonny, now the city's unofficial mascot. Children pointed, some clapped, someone held a sign. "Thank you, Sonny." But Sonny didn't care for any of that. He only turned toward Lily, tail thumping against the sidewalk as she sat cross-legged beside him. "You did it," she whispered into his ear. And somehow, that seemed to be enough. By June, Charleston had blossomed into its full southern glory. The streets were lined with azalea blooms, and the lazy hum of cicadas echoed from every tree. The salt, sweet breeze from the harbor danced through the alleys of the French Quarter, carrying with it the laughter of tourists, the clink of cafe glasses, and the distant sound of a street violinist playing under Spanish moss. On a shaded bench in Waterfront Park, Lily Thompson sat with her feet swinging above the brick path, a notebook open on her lap. Her red curls were lighter now, sun-kissed and free, no longer pinned back in fear. She wore a sleeveless white dress, speckled with small blue flowers, and a wide-brimmed straw hat tilted on her head. At her feet, Sonny lay stretched out, his golden coat gleaming in the afternoon light, tongue lolling from the heat, but eyes gently alert. It had been nearly 4 months since the trial ended. The darkness that once clung to Lily's world had loosened its grip. She laughed freely now, high musical and unguarded. She told jokes at breakfast, read stories aloud, and had even made a new friend at the community center, a boy named Marcus, who loved drawing as much as she did and always shared his crayons. Amanda Thompson walked out from the nearby visitor center carrying a bottle of water and a clipboard. She looked different too, her posture lighter, her eyes clearer. She wore a soft denim shirt tucked into khaki shorts and a lanyard that read, "Therapy Dog Program, Charleston Chapter." Amanda had enrolled them both in a local program for trauma-informed canine therapy. Not as clients this time, but as volunteers. Sonny had passed all his evaluations with ease, and Amanda, once hesitant to believe in healing she couldn't teach, now gave talks to parents about trust patience and the quiet miracle of animal companionship. "Ready?" she asked, handing Lily the water. Lily nodded and took a sip. "Is it okay if I tell them about the park that day?" she asked. Amanda hesitated, then knelt. "Only if you want to." Lily looked down at Sonny. He remembers. Their group sessions were held every Saturday morning in a circle of folding chairs under a canopy by the marina. This morning's session included 2 new families. One was a single mother named Karen with her 10-year-old son, Tyler, who had stopped speaking after a car accident. Karen was a petite woman with short curly hair and a quiet voice that cracked whenever she tried to talk about her son's silence. The other was a grandmother named Ruth, who cared for her granddaughter Mia after the child's parents died in a fire. Ruth was tall, dignified, and wore floral scarves that she wrapped around her silver-streaked hair like a crown. Sonny moved gently among them, all responding to nonverbal cues, resting his chin on Tyler's leg, until the boy giggled, letting Mia braid little clovers into his fur. He had no degrees, no titles, just a presence that soothed something ancient and raw inside each of them. After the session, Amanda introduced a surprise. The city council, she began glancing at a crowd that had gathered near the old dock stage, has asked to recognize someone very special today. A representative from the mayor's office stepped forward. He was a man in his early 50s with a soft gray beard, pressed slacks, and a demeanor equal parts official and fatherly. "We often speak of courage in our city," he said into the microphone. "We award it to soldiers, to officers, to citizens who act when no one else dares. But sometimes, courage has 4 legs, golden fur, and eyes that see what no one else can." He motioned toward Sonny, who had stood at Lily's side. For his bravery, loyalty, and service to the children of Charleston, the man continued, "We are proud to bestow upon Sonny the official title of Charleston's Courageous Canine." The small crowd erupted in applause. Tyler clapped hardest. Mia squealed. Lily beamed. The representative handed Amanda a small engraved plaque and placed a navy blue ribbon around Sonny's neck, from which hung a round medal stamped with the seal of the city. Sonny wagged his tail politely. That evening, the 3 of them, Amanda, Lily, and Sonny, walked slowly along the marina path as the sun dipped toward the horizon. The water was golden, rippling gently with the breeze, and the sky above melted into shades of rose and soft lavender. Seagulls floated like paper kites above the fishing boats, and somewhere someone was playing a banjo. They stopped at the end of the pier, the same spot Amanda used to visit during the worst days, when Lily wouldn't eat, when Sonny hadn't yet arrived, when the future felt like it might never return. But tonight it had. Lily knelt beside Sonny and wrapped both arms around his neck. She whispered into his ear just loud enough for Amanda to hear. "You saved me, my hero." Sonny licked her cheek. Amanda watched them as the tide lapped gently against the pilings. She blinked back tears not of grief, but of something else. A quiet reverence for all that had passed and for the silent strength that had carried them through. Sometimes healing didn't come with answers. Sometimes it came in the form of golden fur, soft breath, and the unwavering presence of someone who simply stayed. Sometimes healing doesn't come from medicine or words. Sometimes it comes in the form of loyalty presence and a soft heartbeat lying quietly by your side. Sonny didn't just protect Lily. He helped her remember how to live, how to trust, and how to speak again. In a world that often rushes past quiet pain, maybe the bravest thing we can do is stay. If this story touched something deep in your heart, please share it with someone who might need a reminder that hope can arrive in unexpected forms. Comment below and tell us, have you ever been saved by something small and silent and loyal? Have you ever met a Sonny in your own life? And don't forget to subscribe so we can keep sharing stories that remind us all of the quiet strength love carries.